So for even and odd, all right, so let's talk about what even means. So an even function fits into, if you make x negative, then it means that the y value stays the same. Okay? What that's really saying is, so an example of this is the absolute value graph. And remember, absolute value, right? It's a V. So you need to have these graphs memorized in your head, what they look like, right? What this is saying is that when this is negative, so let's say that this is x, right? Then your y value, or your f of x, is this right here, right? Whatever this, like if this was like 2, and this was like 7, right? This would be 2, 7, right? When we make it negative, which is just a fancy way of saying on the other side, right? The y value will be the same. That's what an even function is. Okay. Can y'all tell me another even function besides the absolute value graph? What's the U-shaped graph called?
Quadratic.
Quadratic works too, right? Why? Why does the quadratic work?
Because it's the same as...
Same idea, right? Wherever you go out x, the y is still the same as when you go out negative x, right? That's the definition of what it means. So, if I give you a function like this one, which is what, f of x equals 4x to the 5th minus 5x to the 4th, right? What you're going to do is, if I make x negative, if I plug in a negative x into all of these, that's 5th, right? So I make x negative, right? The goal is that does this thing that I just solved in purple, does it look like the one in orange? Does it become the same thing? If it does, it's even. If it doesn't, then it's not even. Okay? But not even does not imply that it's odd.
But isn't it the best way to figure that out is if it's odd exponents, then...
So I'm gonna get to that. You can do that, yeah. But let's talk about what's gonna end up happening here. So when you do negative x to the 5th, that means you're doing negative x times negative x times negative x 5 times, right? So is that gonna come out positive or negative? Negative, right? Negative times 4 is gonna be negative 4, right? So this is negative 4x to the 5th. Over here, when I do negative x to the 4th, it's even. It's going to come out positive, right? Because it's an even number of x negatives, right? So this is just going to be positive times 5. Yeah, it would become negative 5x to the 4th. Okay. So then this, because this right here and this right here are not matching up, right? They're not the same thing. Then we know that this is not even, right? That doesn't mean it's odd. Doesn't mean it's neither yet. Just means it's not even, right? So what we said as a way to kind of be like a shortcut on this is, we said if the exponents are changing from even and odd, if they're not all even or if they're not all odd, then you know automatically that it's neither. Okay, so here's the $1 million question. Why does that rule always work? Because anytime you raise it to the 5th power, it's going to change. It's going to stay odd. The negative is going to come out, right? So if you had nothing but odds, so if I had nothing but like x cubed plus x, right? Those are both odd, right? If I plug in a negative, this is going to come out as a negative, right? And this is going to come out as a negative. And that would be the definition of an odd function, right? If it was something like x to the 4th plus x squared, no matter what I plug in here, it's going to come out as a positive, right? No matter what I plug in here, it's going to come out as a positive, right? So that means, by our definition, it's going to be the same thing. no matter what. Okay? So if that's the way you want to think about it, totally fine. If all the exponents are even, then it's even. If all the exponents are odd, it'll always be odd. Okay? And if they're changing, then it's neither. Okay? So we need to talk about the odd, right? What's an odd function? Okay. So So what's an odd function? So an odd function is defined as f of negative x equals negative f of x. Okay? So what does this mean? Well, this means when you change x to a negative, the y is negative. Okay? So a common one is a line. Okay? I can do that better. Hold on. It's really hard to write at an angle. Okay. Okay. Why is that true? Because if you make x negative, y becomes negative, right? So if I take a positive x, this is a positive y, right? This point here. If I flip it and I make x negative, then the y value will be negative. Okay. Like an example with numbers, if I give you 2, 2, then what has to occur is you have to get, if I make x negative, the y value has to be negative. When that happens, when you change the x, the y changes as well in the sign for every value. That's odd. That's what an odd function is. Okay? So in our function, again, it's, well, you know what, I'm going to be lazy here. If we go back to this one, when we plugged in a negative, do you see how this one changed to a negative, but this one stayed the same? Right? In an odd function, everything flips the sign. So because this one changed, but this one didn't, it's not odd.
That's why it's neither.
That's why it's neither. Yeah. Okay. So the short version is, if all your exponents are odd, the function is odd. If all of them are even, it will be even, right? And if they're flipping, then actually it's always going to be neither, right? However, if you're not certain, you plug in a negative x and you see what happens. If it becomes the same as the original, it's even. If all the signs change for every term, it's odd. And if it's both, then for some it changes and some it stays the same, then it's neither.